How's it going, everyone? Sorry for a little bit of a late start today. Our hair and makeup department is really understaffed. They took forever, and I don't even look like I had my hair and makeup done.
They all went to Gen Con.
Is this the same gag? Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So I'm here today. We are going to be painting a wiz-war mini. This is the White Wizard from the STL Kickstarter that funded recently. We're going to be making these guys available for. Oh wow, yep, I'm just that good. That's why they pay me the big bucks, ladies and gentlemen. Um, yeah, so that just funded, and we're going to be making them available for sale soon. So there he goes. He's just about to rotate right into his best pose.
Here it comes.
Here
it comes.
If you watched these before, you know that I like to use these weird thumbtack base things to hold on to the model. Lets me paint underneath. Gives me sort of a handle. Yeah, he doesn't. Guys, this isn't the kind of majesty that our audience is used to from my painting streams. Let me see if I can do it. Will you stand up straight? Okay.
Hey, there he is.
There he goes. But he's like a little too tall when he's right in the center.
That's
There we
fine.
go.
There
All
we go.
right. Yeah, remote camera work is great. Okay, so he will balance. I didn't
That is
think he
not
was
the
going
base
to
that he will
balance.
come with. Don't worry.
Now, the bloopers continue to ensue because some of you may also. Wow, that's comedic timing. I wasn't even on about that. What I was gonna say. You remember those late night infomercials that used to run live and all sorts of
QVC
stupid stuff would happen? I feel like I'm on one of those right now. Anyway, only 80s kids will get that. Yes. So the STL, the file that you will buy and print from, does have a complete staff, but it broke off, and something about this resin, I don't know what it is. It's really hard to glue stuff back on. I mean, you can do it obviously, but for whatever reason, it just takes a super glue a really long time to set. So when it snapped off on my way out the door, I was like, I can't. I'm gonna have to hold it in place for like 20 minutes. So we're just gonna not have the staff attached today. So unfortunately, you're getting an off-balance, half-staff White Wizard. Sounds like something you'd order at a Starbucks. Um,
We're only
but
bringing
we're
you
still
the
gonna
best.
paint. Yeah, we're still gonna paint because the reason why I brought him, he gives you a good opportunity to look at painting white. Painting white is one of those things everybody says it's really hard. It's not anymore as much as it was with the tools. There's lots of good tools, whether it's just you can start off with your white spray, then use some contrast or some quick shade, whatever your favorite brand is. We get a lot of easy results going there, but we're gonna get a little bit more in depth today. And by we, I'm talking about Hunter, who is also here.
Hey, how's it
Say
going?
hi, how's it going? There,
I
very
can-
good,
yes.
very good. And also we got Brandon.
Yo.
He's the one with the remote camera zooming out.
He's
so you can see
producing.
the half staff wizard.
Yeah, he's our Spielberg.
Yep. So, I have an overused wet palette today that I probably should have changed.
Jeez.
Yeah,
That's
this is what
artist's
art
palette.
looks like. Yes, thank you. This is what art looks like, everybody.
I did want to mention
If
he
your
mentioned-
wet palette doesn't look like this, you're doing it wrong.
He
What were
did
you gonna
mention
say?
the breakage and the resin. This is specifically what we used. It may not be the same for gluing your resin. We don't.
Right, there
it's
are
not
so
universal.
many kinds of resin out there to 3D print with. Some have more detail, some have less, some are more durable, some are not, some are more brittle, some are more, it's all over the place. A lot of
You
it
can
does.
also mix them together.
Whoa, wow, that sounds dangerous, but you could.
Then they get even more properties.
And I got the chat up over here for as long as this remains up.
Let me see. Let me grab one more color, assuming that I brought it.
How's it going, y'all?
I'm looking for one of my weird, maybe even use it on stream. Ah, here it is. One of my weird AK colors called Middle Stones. This is a kind of a very desaturated green, kind of an off yellow. So the thing about painting white, white is almost always associated with good characters in fantasy, like wiz-war. But you can still say a lot just with white by the base color you start with. So there's a lot of ways to start. I mean, the most basic way, obviously, is white to gray to black. That's probably the most simple way to do it. And you can get, of course, a full range of values with that, but you don't have any color. And so that takes a lot of character out of it. And then from there, you can do a white with just about anything else. Now, even the palest green, if you use that, greens, reds, blues, the really saturated colors will always sort of read as green, as a super pale green or a super pale or pinkish red. So if you really wanted to say white, the best starting colors are often sort of like a cream or a sort of desaturated blue-gray if you want color to be there. So that's kind of what I've got going on the palette to start with. So this is I'm sure this is one that I've brought up on stream before. It's AK. It's just called Snow Blue. Like I've said before, the AK paints have very literal colors compared to like some of the other brands, which would be, you know, like Frost Giant's beard or something like that.
Ideneth blue, or
Oh, yeah,
blue. It'd be like Ideneth scale, and you're like, what's an Ideneth? What color is it scale?
And that's the GW Star Manager says, well, look over here. Let me show you. What
Yeah. Oh, Ideneth, you want? Yeah, that's where I start. I start with my paint first, then grab my minis second.
I make fun, but a lot of this paint palette has gone to painting my personal Age of Sigmar army. So
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
That's probably why it's on the brain. Hunter's the one who brought up Ideneth.
That's how you got to it. If you guys check, this will be a personal plug, but not for me. It'll be for Ben. Check out his Instagram for his personal projects. He also shares painting tips on there, and well, I guess that's painting tips. Just more like look at this cool stuff I painted, which is also fine.
Yeah, my old WordPress blog spot is still up, which had a lot of good painting tips, but Facebook stopped sharing links from WordPress. Like it always flagged them as suspicious.
Yeah, there you go.
So once I stopped being able to share my blog at all, it was just like, why am I doing this? And that's kind of when I went to Instagram, where it's a little harder to show tutorial type stuff. Although I did recently do a painting article on Bell of Lost Souls, so you can always check that out.
Yeah. While you're kind of doing this step here, a couple things, folks. If you have any questions, first off, drop them in the Twitch chat. Love to chat. Especially, painting questions, stuff like that. It's a great time to ask Ben some tips. If you have paint tips on other stuff that's not painting white or about this painting white, I'm sure he can give you some advice. Also, Gen Con, we mentioned it a couple times, is happening. We know not everyone's at the show, and probably if you're here with us in Twitch chat, you're probably not at the show. You've probably got other stuff to be doing.
Yeah, and if you are at the show, Jesus, I'm glad you're watching, but put the phone down.
We're honored. We're honored.
Yeah, we are honored
to
go check out the exhibit hall, get some events.
From what I understand, it's a crowded mess in there. So count yourself lucky. You get to skip the crowd because we actually have a Warehouse 23 Gen Con sale right now. Virtual. So you can visit our virtual booth 1401, and you can check out our con releases, which are wiz-war and Tribes. This is going to be a limited digital release, or limited online release, not digital, but you can get a copy of wiz-war, get a copy of Tribes before it comes out at retail. That's going to be from now through August 10th.
Assuming while supplies last.
It's while supplies last, yeah. Which, but we do have some stock of that. But you can get that in now. It won't be there forever because then you'll have to wait for the actual retail release. But we wanted to give people at home the same opportunities as folks at the con. We're also running a sale, so not on wiz-war and Tribes since those are brand new, but on a lot of select Munchkin, Car Wars, the Fantasy Trip, Dice Games, Dice, and Dice accessories. You can check that out. We link that in the comments below. You can check that out. That's a great sale. And that's going now till August 10th. So, and of course we got the Caligula Kickstarter as well. That's also going till the 10th, so don't miss out on that either.
Yep, that's a fun little drinking game.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a little bit of a departure, but Steve designed it, so
yep.
Kind of based on quarters with a lot of extra stuff going on. You can make laws, and if you break them, you gotta take a drink.
Yep.
Fun little drinking pub game.
All right, so we got a good base coat going on with the Snow Blue, and so now's when you can come in with like a pure white. This is one of the few P3 colors I still use. Now, part of it is because black and white are always the first paints to sell out at the game store. They just are, because no matter what your project, you're probably going to need black and white for something. So I have yet to ever in the wild see a pure white either by Vallejo or AK or any of the other brands that I have been using so frequently these days. But This Moral White by Privateer Press, I still think is very good. It blends very smoothly and is very opaque, and those are both, pretty good qualities you want in paints, particularly white. You want white to cover. So while I am using this because I haven't been able to try any alternatives yet, this is like kind of my older brand. I would still recommend it if you need a white. P3 white is great.
If you can find it, that's the catch.
Yeah, it's getting harder to find.
I haven't seen them in the wild in a while.
Yeah, most game stores used to have P3 paint displays.
I just don't think they're making them anymore, really. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure they're making them in small quantities, but like...
They definitely still make the paints. That a long time ago, about a year ago, we talked about how we heard a rumor that they were going away. They're not going away anytime soon.
Wow.
And Privateer Press is there at Gen Con too, so
yeah, you can ask them about it.
They usually sell their paints at their booth, and in the past that's been
where you
place.
Restock.
Yeah, that has been a place where I restock just because it can be a pain in the butt to find back when I was using P3 exclusively, it was often really hard to find an online store that had all the colors I needed, and on top of that, like we were already saying, local stores don't have them so much.
Yeah, adding to that white thing, I would not. I usually use. I have a mix of a lot of different paints. I have Vallejo, really small amount of Monument, but a lot of Citadel. And I generally kind of. I think a lot of people default to Citadel because it's that paint that you see with Warhammer and all that stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, and generally that's fine. I mean, it's a little, it costs more, but it is what it is. Like it's not a bad paint generally. I will say their whites are really bad generally. Like their off whites are fine, but if you want to, it's the one paint like of all the paints, regardless of pricing on it, which you could not suggest stuff due to pricing, but like I can't recommend their white. I would definitely try out like Vallejo or something like that. Like I've had good luck with Vallejo. I have Monument. I know you have AK, which is people have said it's good. But like you said, a lot of pretty much if it's not Citadel white, it like sells out really fast because every time I have to go get a paint, I'm actually looking at my we have a few FLGSs here, and I'm having to see when they're restocking paints.
Yeah.
To get in there.
All right, so now that I've got that white over there, what I do and what a lot of other miniature painters do is you start with the midtone, which in this case was the snow blue. And then from there, you add the highlights and the shadows. Doesn't really have to be in a particular order. So the shadows are, again, it's another desaturated blue, obviously a bit darker this time. It is the gray blue. Again, a very ordinary sounding name, and that's pretty much exactly what it is. It's a blue with some gray mixed in, so it's not super saturated, and so it helps read as white. Now, as you move into the darker shadows, you can try to decide if you want to get really fancy or not. Because we're using a blue, if you add a little bit of a warm tone to the very dark shadows, you can do some of that optical trickery, that sort of classical using contrasting colors in a really subtle way to create a vibrant appearance. But it can be a little tricky to get right.
We can show that on close up too.
And you also are going to kind of decide to have to figure out how dark your shadows need to go. Because theoretically, the white underneath his sleeve, that would be fully within shadow. So it can get as dark as black, but then it might not read as white on the miniature, if that makes any sense. Because a lot of, it's just about how your brain is sort of processing things.
So obviously I'm a different level of painter. One thing I'm noticing with the color choice that you're using there, it's very similar to what the contrast white, I believe, is what they have for the Citadel line is.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they call it contrast white.
It's called something else.
But I know what you're talking about.
Once again, back to their naming conventions. It's something, I'm sure it's some Space Marine name and then
Apothecary.
White. Apothecary. That's probably what it is, actually. I think you're exactly right.
I almost bought some a while back for some project I was working on.
It's actually kind of funny that because they use a very similar, so what it really is, and I think some people may get confused, because that is going to be a quick way for people to say, like, I'm going to do white this way.
And it looks good on the tabletop.
It looks good.
You can't argue with the results there.
but it's interesting because what they're doing is kind of like, it's not actually white. It's actually that kind of color, that bluish gray that you're using. But it's like, it's meant to go in the recesses. And
Yeah.
not say it, and what I'll say is, if you're trying to do white and you get apothecary white and you use it and suddenly it's like, oh, this doesn't look very white to me. You'll want to go over the raised areas with a more pure white, and that's why you're getting that. It's because this is the actual effect it's trying to create. Ben is just doing a very more precise version of it. The apothecary white is like kind of the slapdash, do it quick kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'd recommend going back over, because I had the same thing. There's a couple of characters I was painting for Marvel Crisis Protocol
Oh, that's what you were using.
that were very white. So like,
Trying to think of which 40k Hunter
No,
had that was white,
I was-
and that's coming up short.
I was not dumb enough to decide to do an entire White Scars army or something like that. I did a Moon Knight, which is 99% white, and I did Kingpin, his suit is white. So I was trying to figure those out, and I remember I did a Moon Knight, and I was like, oh, this is okay, and then I did Kingpin's suit, and I went back over it with white, and I'm like, that's better.
Yeah.
But this is like the more exact, better looking version of that is what Ben is doing. We actually had a question in chat from just another guy named Harry. Wow, that's a good username. Move along. Oh wait, no, that is not who. No, they did ask the question, did they? Oh no, V Lookup asked the question. Sorry. Tried painting a Car Wars vehicle white, but just looked too chalky and not metallic. Any hints on trying to paint a metallic white?
Well, I mean, that's confusing. I mean, white and metallic are kind of two different things.
Mhm.
So, I mean, maybe what you're going for is a very pale metal, like a platinum or a silver, rather than a steel.
I think what they might be aiming for is like literally if you saw like a white Honda outside or something like that white.
Oh, yeah,
on a car.
that really
How do you
perfect
get
sheen.
glossy.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
glossy white, I guess, would probably be more accurate to a car.
That's really tricky because so much of it has to do like I mean, the easy answer is gloss medium.
That's
what
fair.
Games Workshop does, they call it hard coat.
There's a few. There's generic
Yeah.
ones that do a lot
There's
cheaper.
lots of them out
Vallejo
there.
and stuff like that.
Um,
Army Painter has one.
But otherwise, like as far as how to do that, you would have to think about what a painting of a car would look like, or a photograph of that white car would look like, and how all those highlights are going to fall, and then you're going to have to try to recreate that illusion on a car. So it's going to be really tough. And one of the things that I remember people, and they still do, criticize when people try to do a non-metallic metal illusion. Hopefully you know what that means. Is that, well, it doesn't really look like metal from all the same angles because the reflections are different, which isn't, I mean, that's not really true. But for this white car, that would be true. Because the highlights, the sharpest highlights would look different from what angle you were viewing the car from. So, the short, easy answer is gloss medium. The second answer is like become an astoundingly good painter. I've looked, when I was looking for first painting the Car Wars cars, I looked for examples of things like that on the internet, and there, at least at this point, there aren't enough vehicles out there that are like traditional car paint jobs, right? People have like spent decades making amazing tanks and planes, figuring out how to do stuff like weathering and camo and all that stuff. But I think, when it comes to painting model cars, you just get a glossy finish. Yeah, you get a glossy enamel paint and you spray that on the hull before you put everything else together, and that's kind of how you do it.
I've started following so there's some YouTubers that do cars, models, not like miniatures, I'd say.
Okay.
They're
Yeah,
doing more
something
like
I've never looked at.
Tamiya models and stuff, and they are pretty cool. They're one. I don't know if you've seen any of these model channels, but
No,
almost
it is something
ASMR.
interesting because it's a very weird gap between like gamer painters and modelers and like the old school scale modelers.
yeah,
And like within the gaming sense, it usually seems like what we strive for, gamer painters, is more of like an illustration on a
Yes.
very tiny scale. So you have theatrical colors, theatrical blown out highlights. So it looks like a really cool painting, but not like a photograph.
and it's
And-
the opposite for the scale
Exactly.
modelers. Yeah,
The scale modelers are trying to recreate absolute realism, on that tiny scale.
their artistry is precision, And not that miniature painters aren't precise, but like their precision to a scale that I'd say is different. They're like your artistry comes from the fact that you're interpreting the miniature in a different way than someone else.
Right.
You're painting it a different way, but the person doing a lot of these scale modeling, and there's artistry to both in different ways. But when I'm looking at these scale modelers, a lot of them, the reason I watch them is because they're like kind of ASMR-y. A lot of them aren't talking while they're doing it. A lot of them
So
are
it's
just
the
like
sound of the brush whooshing back and forth.
it's like you hear the clippers clipping stuff, sanding and stuff like that, and they'll have like subtitles and stuff like that because a lot of them are even international. They may not even speak like English. They might just be doing it in some other language, and they're doing like these really detailed Tamiya model kits or like really detailed military model kits, whatever the case may be. But I've been watching some guys doing car ones, and they're so cool. Like it's such a different skill set that I don't have. You know, I like building models, and I've been doing some military stuff recently, and I'm definitely in a different element. It's like a totally different landscape from what I've been doing. But some of these cars, they're like making little. They're like, okay, they have decals of the seat belts that you can put in there, essentially like little decal pieces. But then they're like putting the decal onto like a little piece of brass, and then so they can bend the seatbelt and make it like an actual little seatbelt in there. It's so cool. It's such a cool little thing.
But we made sure to keep it easy.
Yes.
You don't have to worry about anything inside the canopy.
No.
In a Star Wars car.
No, you do not.
Yeah.
This is actually this is a really good tip though, because white is extremely intimidating. Like I said, I've even painting the quick way with
And I mean, honestly, I might should go back to the beginning and just say like, if you're gonna paint white, start with a white base coat.
Yes.
This is I often use Tamiya white, which is great, but it can be a little bit glossy sometimes in a way that makes the paint not adhere as much as you might like. But so even still, I usually really like it because it never screws up the detail and always leaves a smooth finish. But for this guy, I actually went with the Games Workshop's Wraithbone white, so he's a little bit of an off-white. And I've really been liking that stuff too.
Their off-white spray's good. I've used Wraithbone quite a bit.
Yeah, their sprays have come a long way since I kind of swore them off a long time ago. Now they'll still leave a little bit of a texture, but it sometimes it can kind of help. You know, having like that microscopic sort of tooth that can kind of suck in the paint off your brush, I think can kind of be helpful.
I think it's designed really well for stuff like contrast paints. Again, going back to that kind of thing, things not just contrast paints, but more thinned out paints, washes, things of that nature.
Right, and I think that's what they say it's for, and that's actually why I bought it, because I never got around to this project, but I had a army for a completely different sci-fi game about a year and a half ago that I was just convinced, like, I love this game, I'm going to paint this whole army, I want to paint it quick, I'm going to try to do it the contrast method. Never got around to painting it.
Yep. I know what game you're talking about too.
Yep.
Yeah, that tooth though, if you don't have it, you miss it. And because I know
some of the very, very top tier painters have no texture at all.
Yes, but they're also not using they're not starting with washes a lot of the times. They're usually starting with strokes, and then because when you paint something on, you're adding that grit and tooth simply because your brush strokes and stuff like that. It's just enough. So for me, I was doing I have a Necron army. That's kind of like my big Warhammer thing, and I switched over from. I didn't really switch over, but I started speeding up some of my process by airbrushing on a particular metallic before I did my last contrast step. But it's the Vallejo Air Metal color, which are really great metallics. The problem is they're so smooth and their finish is so nice. They don't have any grit to it at all, no catch. So putting contrast over the top is like if you just waxed a car,
right,
and you're dropping
it
like it's raining on there, it's just beating. So you have to be real careful with it.
And as good as that Tamiya paint is at capturing detail, that's basically that can happen sometimes with it.
Because they're doing the same thing. Because Tamiya is a model paint. Those guys, they're the ones that are making those insanely detailed model kits, and what they're aiming at is not necessarily because they have glossy coats and stuff like that, but their main customer base is looking for a more glossy finish because they're probably expecting them to be painting vehicles of some sort, either military or, plane or whatever. So
My only problem with it was really that the can is so big and it doesn't seem to be as good all the way through. Like when you get to the bottom of the can and there's not as much propellant left, it seems to blast out a little chunkier. And some of the models towards the end had a little bit more of that sort of gritty feel to them.
I have a couple
They still
cans
paint
of
it
the
up good,
Tamiya at home. I haven't tried it in a while though.
I'm talking about the Wraithbone again.
Oh, Wraithbone, yeah, for sure. That one gets chunky.
But yeah, that happens
Blood
because the
Vulture.
propellant goes out, and so it's just like an airbrush. If you don't have a nice constant stream going through, it creates a little bit of a spatter. Not that it is, and bear in mind, this isn't like terrible. Like,
No.
It's still totally workable.
Again, every hobby tool has ups and downs. No matter what you use, there hasn't been a perfect paint invented. You're gonna get close.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the one.
You're gonna be the one.
No,
You're gonna add the 12
not.
paint line active right
It
now
would
to
be, it would be rad though.
the 2 mini
This
paints.
is so odd. This guy has like a mold line. I mean, I'm sure it's just a
Just a
like part of why he ended up here and not as the actual studio painted wizard model is because he did have some gaps, but it's just fun. Like because 3D printing errors happen. I don't know if you guys are all 3D printers, probably not, but that's one of the reasons why it hasn't replaced traditional miniatures yet, is because it takes a while and there can be errors, and this guy had a few. Just from the usually it's from the piece itself shifting ever so slightly
Yeah.
before the next layer is deposited, and so you get like, let me see, like this. It has some ribbing,
Yeah.
but then what I thought was funny was there's like this perfect line down his arm right where a mold line would be on
That's
a
funny.
traditionally cast mini. All right, so maybe
You
let's
think
do a
we'll
little
throw 'em in
bit
there?
more work on the coat.
Yeah. Let's get to like a where you think a good median is, and we'll throw it on the rotating thing before your next little step.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'm not sure what this guy. I don't know. I think we decided, and we in this case is me and the rest of the people that worked in some form on the wiz-war STL Kickstarter, that this guy is like, he's probably the most dastardly, which is funny because like I was saying earlier, white is usually associated with good characters, but the look on this guy's face is like pure malevolence. And if you haven't, go check out the wiz-war Kickstarter page. They're pretty cool models. I think what I found the most interesting about them is there have been lots of cartoony models that I've seen off and on over the years. Usually, gamers like to go towards the chibi style sculpts, with the big heads, big eyes, tiny bodies. So that's what you see the most. So it's just so interesting to see something that is cartoonish, but it's not just chibi. It's like a different style.
Sure.
And
It's classic because it's Phil Folio's art, and it's really cool. I think that's the first time I've ever seen it in a 3-dimensional.
yeah,
thing.
and other than like the Girl Genius game, which does exist, I think somebody made it with like one of the open source engines, and it's on Steam. At least it was a while back. Yeah, this might be the first time they've been put into 3D.
It's definitely the first physical 3D that we've seen.
Yeah, as far as I know, but you never. I mean, maybe he had some toys that he did.
Sure. No, you're not wrong there.
Because every time I go to find something out about something he's done, like I'm reminded of just how long he's been making cartoons for. Like,
Oh yeah.
The gaming scene.
I mean,
All the crazy characters.
My first introduction to Phil Folio was back in like mid '90s, early '90s Magic cards. So,
Yeah. There was another one there's like this whole series of books where it's like a pun on the word myth, like
Yeah, I
myth
know what you're
understanding
talking about, yeah.
and stuff. I never read them, but growing up, I had a couple of friends who were brothers that just loved those, and they were like, they kept telling me that was going to be my birthday present or something, and then so I didn't buy them myself, and then it never ended up happening. But wow, I really have a way to go off on a tangent here. Anyway, my point is, Folio did a comic based on those books.
Mhm.
He did the graphic.
That's where
I don't know if it
from.
was graphic novelizations of the novels or if it was like supplemental material, like sometimes
I
I
don't
see.
know.
I'm not quite sure how big this universe was. Yeah, so
That's cool. Yeah, I remember the comics or the graphic novel.
I didn't know there were graphic novels until yesterday.
Oh wow.
I
Oh,
was,
and to
I was
answer-
Googling something that he did.
To answer Chad's question, the crew seems to be doing great. I've checked in with a couple people throughout the day, and it's been really busy. We've gotten a lot of people getting wiz-war,
Yeah,
so that's been a blast.
everybody loves the pre-releases.
Yeah.
He's a little blown out. How hard is it to reduce the lighting? I mean, I guess you can sort of see something here. I'm not quite sure
see it.
what I'm.
I'm
you
looking
can
at
see
it.
it. Okay. Okay.
I've
It seemed
got-
a little bit overexposed. But yeah, that's a little rough.
But you can kind of see, especially on his back, you can see those like grayish blue shadows and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, there he goes.
Yes, these are the wiz-war 3 printed minis, the STLs.
Yep.
We're printing them we're printing them. We're painting up the one of the wizards today because today is wiz-war's like it's not the official retail release, but it's the official first time you can get it outside Kickstarter at Gen Con and
on the
on
store.
Warehouse 23
Yeah.
at least for this week. So. The 3D prints will also be available for folks in the future once they deliver to Kickstarter backers and everything. And then those will go up on Warehouse 23
Which should be soon, if not already.
soon-ish. I don't know the exact date, but we won't. I don't want to overpromise there because
Mm.
obviously the team's at Gen Con, so
Yeah.
I don't know what their time frame is on everything.
Yeah, I don't
We
either.
haven't announced anything yet.
Keep an eye on the Kickstarter if you backed it.
But I know there are
Yeah.
things moving behind the scenes to get
There are,
the
for
STLs available for sale. So I'm one of those moving pieces.
And he's moving, as you can see.
Yep.
It's moving and cruising.
All right. Even though it's not related to today's theme of painting white, I've started on his skin just to get it in there.
No, we are not going to offer printed versions of these, but there are printing services. We actually did a Daily Illuminator article recently, I believe, about 3D printing at like libraries and stuff like that.
Oh,
There's
wow,
also
that's
stuff
neat.
like because there's like maker spaces, libraries have started adding 3D printers to a lot of their rosters of
That's
stuff,
wild.
and then you can
Because I really want one. There's no room in my house, so maybe I'm going to start doing more trips to my local library. Anyway,
I don't know if
sorry
ours
to interrupt.
there's not every library has it, so you want to check that, but
Yeah.
there's also some services like man, I'm trying to think of the name of it.
Does it create space?
Not Create Space, Shapeways.
Shapeways?
Yeah, where you can have stuff printed there
They're
as well.
expensive though.
It depends. It depends on the service you're looking for.
But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's the sort of thing like being good at 3D printing is still a skill unto
Yeah.
itself, and so it's the sort of thing where like Hunter or I can't really like we're too busy doing other things to stop and learn how to do it and get good at it, and then start producing stuff that is
For
You
our
know,
personal stuff.
yeah,
I've-
it's really consumer worthy, that doesn't have support sprue holes in it.
Oh,
and doesn't have
you could talk to some
crinkles.
there's a company that we've talked about on here before that was doing 3D printed minis, sent out a whole batch of 3D printed minis that weren't cured.
yeah.
They hadn't even finished curing.
So those are all things that like you have to do. So
we don't
without having somebody doing it as their full-time job,
Yeah.
and we just don't think we have the demand for that.
Yeah, what we're
just not
what we're saying
something
is
we're
these exist because they're available in STL format. We can do certain mini sets like our ogre minis. We still are committed to making those into plastic, so that set is planning on still coming out. But we are not doing we don't have a miniatures factory out here, unfortunately. And 3D printing, we have some 3D printers, but it's not like a print farm where we can print a lot of this stuff out. We can do it for special events and stuff like that, but not as like an actual product necessarily. We did do a bit with our Hexscape, and we were able to do a low quantity of that stuff for
If anyone's wondering
To
what I'm
show people
squinting
like
at,
a-
there's like a hair. And I'm trying to get it off with the brush. It's being really
3D
stubborn.
printing Illuminati miniatures. That was a comment that just came through.
I
I don't know what you'd make in Illuminati, but hey, an Eye in the Pyramid
Just
3D
like
print
Men
would be
in
fun.
Black, and
Sure.
I guess just art from the cards.
Eye in the Pyramid. We should do a STL of an Eye in the Pyramid. at some point.
We really should, just like nothing too fancy, and we just put it with all the STL products. That sounds like a good
That's a
idea.
fun thing with STLs.
That's
we
a
just
good
kinda-
thing for me to propose, since I wouldn't have to do any work for it.
There it is. Any word on Gru? Nothing specific right now. It's still in production. So keep an eye on the Kickstarter if you
It's
back.
in physical production.
Yes.
It's in manufacturing. It's not in like. Yeah. Okay.
No,
being
I'm saying
created.
that's what production is. It's being created. Production is not available in Warehouse 23. It means it's being created by a factory. And just keep it on the Kickstarter. It's still on track for its scheduled delivery there. Oh, nice. Yeah, we need to share that as well. I forgot about sorry about that Car Wars Kickstarter from Hillbilly and those guys. Let me pull that up.
I almost feel like you should be over here with me just because you talk enough that it feels weird.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be painting. I'd just be sitting next to you,
I know.
staring at you.
Alright.
Instead, I get to sit behind the camera and stare at you. People don't have to like stare. They'll see me.
Okay, so now I'm gonna move on to a different shade of white. For his beard, it's gonna be a little bit yellow. So instead of the snow blue, I'm starting off with ivory. So it's just sort of a yellowish white. It's ivory, right? I mean, you know what ivory looks like. So just getting that in the beard. Now the skull can actually, this is also a great color for bone, but if I am not mistaken, I painted the skull on the studio quality White Wizard to be a lot more yellow. If for no other reason than because there's already so much white going on this guy that, you know, where you can take a few liberties, just go for it. So if that means you do a slightly more yellow skull than what is found in nature, I say do it. And so that's what I did. For the shading, I've got that middle stone. It's a very yellow, a slightly greenish yellow, very dark, kind of like an ochre, but tinted just a little bit more towards the green. So we're just gonna bring that in. Whenever you're doing like big patches of hair, whether it's a beard or a big furry piece, wet blending to start is really helpful. Things like this I find can be really challenging, and I had a professional commission a while back that involved some large areas of fur, and I thought I knew what I was doing, but I ended up having to do a lot of research. One of the great sources I found were the apes that were done by, I think, Eric Swinson for Privateer Press's
Monster Apocalypse.
yeah, Monster Apocalypse, the Empire of the Apes. He did, I believe it's one of the newer releases, the one that's swinging a subway train. I think its name is Gakura, and he had a really good way of because you have to find a way to create the volume of the shape itself. So in this case, the beard, while also making the volume with the individual sort of tufts of hair. Fortunately, you know, we're not going to be called upon to paint each individual strand of hair. We've got it in clumps, which is, you know, how you do it in miniatures. I think this is fun. This is like another great distinction between miniature gamers and scale modelers. Scale modelers will want to like get real hair and like
Yeah.
real hair on there.
Yeah, that's fair. We had another question come through. I want to take a crack at it before Ben does, because Ben might have a different answer for you. He kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but there's a question about why you used white as base coat instead of black or gray. I'm going to tell you my answer as far as the color of the base coat in a general sense. Ben will probably tell you a more specific one about this mini. For me, I do what's called a zenithal in general, which is like a black with a white or gray like over prime, essentially. That essentially is like, it gives you more texture to the base. Like some of it's white, some the darker parts are in the shadows are black. But in a general sense, I prime lighter, but I also, it depends on the type of model. If my goal going in like in this situation is to paint a white mini, start white. It's going to be so much easier to get to white at the end. And going to trying to do white over black is a nightmare. If you're coming up straight from black, whatever the end result of your mini is going to be, start with that color, and it makes it easier to get to the end color. Because like I'm going to be doing an all black Templar army coming up for 40k at some point. I don't normally just go black and then stay black, but for that army, I'm probably just going to prime black because 99% of the model is black.
Yeah.
And that goes for pretty much anything I paint. It's like, as long as you know where you're ending up, it helps where you're starting from, essentially. If you're ending up in white, why would you prime black or gray? Because you're going to end up white. I could see maybe priming gray just because that's your shadow color, but I would never prime. If I'm going to end up with a white model, I'm not going to try to start it black, you know. Make it easier on yourself, too. But Ben may have a better answer.
No, I mean honestly, I don't really have that much to add to that. I do like I just think it's easier to start with white in general. Like if you take think of two miniatures. One has been primed white, one has been primed black. Take a spot of white and spot it on the white one, or spot it on the black one, and on the white one do a spot of black. And which is more opaque, right? Which looks more like what you want it to.
Mm-hmm.
If you do a white spot on a black mini, it's gonna look gray as soon as it starts to dry because it's hard, it's see-through. But the black on white will still look black.
Yeah.
Darker colors always look more opaque.
I think priming black in general is kind of a holdover from the olden times. Because when you growing up, especially, I mean, you I think you started around the same time. I was late '90s in there, early 2000s, you know.
Yeah.
And you were like, no matter what, you were told prime black. Like that was the way.
Yeah, it's very strange.
It's just how but that's how we learned it.
Making me feel old.
I mean, it's true. We were told to prime black all in like you read every.
That's how all the hobby articles started.
And all the
was with
articles.
black
When I started, it was prime white.
Really?
There wasn't a concept of other colors. It's like we started white.
Somewhere in the mid '90s, I think it changed over because all the Citadel stuff was black, and I think it just depended on what paint they were trying to sell, I guess, because it was like you read all the hobby articles, you read all the
what they started selling
stuff.
black.
Yeah, they just had black spray on everything, and it was such bad hobby advice because when you're first starting out, you're leaving paint streaks. You're having to paint so many layers to cover the black, like you said.
Yeah.
It's just so harder. It's so much harder to paint up from black than it is to paint down from white.
And now, having said all of that, I do follow some extraordinary, much better than me miniature painters on Instagram that, for whatever reason, start with black and they still get great results. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they're able to paint over that black base coat without having to do coat after coat after coat after coat. Because another part of the miniature, right, you want to preserve the detail. And when you're trying to paint white over black, you got to do coat, or just smush it on so thick that you're going to risk losing the detail.
It's probably not as bad.
So the fewer coats
but
you have to do, it saves time and it saves detail.
Yeah. Like, since you're doing it on Car Wars Mini, it's probably not the biggest deal, but yeah, generally I would say that black, like I prime black currently, but it's not my only prime. Essentially, I'm priming it black, and then I'm doing a spray of white over the top of it. Yeah. So it's not like I'm not starting with a black base, or if I'm doing my like Necrons, I'm priming black, and then I'm doing like a silver spray on top of that. So it's like there's more to it. I would not personally. I would not start from straight black. Starting from gray is probably fine.
Yeah, only if you're gonna do Black Templars, Death Watch.
That's the first time I'm starting from a black. Like,
maybe
that'll be the
Slaves
first
to
thing.
Darkness if you like that black chaos armor.
If you have something that's going to end up 99% black, sure, that's fine. Why not?
And if it seems like I'm only picking GW products, it's because they're the only ones with factions that run around in all black. You're not going to find that in Bolt Action.
Or any other fantasy, really.
Yeah, not that I can think of. There might be some out there.
War Machine had the
custom black chapter.
What were they called? The Cricks?
Yeah, but even they weren't black.
Yeah, they were more purpley and green and stuff.
They were like kind of a dark gray.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they weren't really like I always thought of them as being like even more utilitarian than any of the other factions. Like it's not so much they paint their stuff black, it's just they don't paint their stuff. Really paint it. Yeah. They probably put some kind of sealant on the metal because if you don't, it rusts. But they're not like Signar or Khador who want to emblazon their proud national colors.
It legitimately this new army that I'm doing, or whenever I do it, is going to be the first thing in probably 10 years that I've painted just straight black. So I haven't done just a solid black prime like that in a long time.
And I mean, and say on the same kind of thinking, I started a red army recently.
Just start with red.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great.
Um,
Just save yourself some heartache. Like my
Yep.
Philip, you guys have seen him on the stream before. He hasn't really come on the hobby stream. We should have Philip in on the hobby stream someday because Philip also paints minis. We just literally played Warhammer this weekend. He has a Blood Angels army. He started with those guys, just sprayed it army painter red, and then went from there. Gave them shades and stuff, but just make it easier on yourself. If you know what it's going to end up as, you could just start with that. It's okay.
yeah.
No one's going to call you out. Eric, when he was painting our Car Wars minis for demo sets, which we still use, thank you so much, Eric. He was just spraying in solid colors to start off. It's like, yeah, why not? There's some of his right back there. Yellow, blue, the ones that we use on a shelf back there. Yellow, blue with a wash on them. Bingo, bango.
And if you don't want to buy a whole can of primer, that's what airbrushes are for. You can just put white paint in that.
Yeah, but you can get by with some pretty not crazy expensive paints too.
Yeah.
It's really fine.
And what I mean is, if you don't want to buy a whole can of red primer just for like one red project,
Yeah.
put red paint in your airbrush before you do anything else.
I did that for those Imperial Knights.
Yeah, that's what I did for Mystery Red Army. We'll say I don't want to tell Hunter what I'm painting. Anybody else, all the rest of you can know, but not Hunter.
Really?
That's why I'm being so
Yes, this is the
secretive.
first time I've even heard of this. There we go.
But yeah, I didn't feel like going to the store to buy a can of red spray, so I just used the same Wraithbone,
Yeah.
and then I airbrushed it red.
I actually need a new can of Wraithbone. Mine finally ran out. I used that on my I'm actually going to be doing it again pretty soon because I got tempted. But my Legion army for Star Wars Legion, I painted that with because I was doing just contrast to make them look like holograms. And I
Yeah.
just did Wraithbone spray on all
You know,
those.
since you did that, I've seen other hologram armies out there. I don't know if
It's
there are
true.
people with the same idea,
So to
or
be
if
fair,
it was Copy Hunter.
I got the idea from another person.
Um,
Well, I take that back. I had the idea independently, and I saw someone else who also did it, and I was like, I asked them what their paint scheme was, and I did it, and I started sharing that, I guess, and since then I've had many people DM me. That's actually one of my most popular old posts that I put on Instagram and like TikTok and stuff. Is people will just ping me asking how I painted those holograms, and I'm like, it is literally the easiest thing in the world, and I think I'm gonna have something similar because I decided I'm gonna do that with my Shatterpoint as well. I was committed to not doing that with Shatterpoint. I was like, no, I'm gonna take my time.
Take your time. It's just a few
Nope.
models.
Not gonna do it.
Oh man.
Decided not to. Well, it's just I liked doing the holograms so much. I was just not gonna do it. And I was like, you know what? It's just fun. It's just fun to do. And I decided with Shatterpoint I'm gonna do it in different colors for different like factions and stuff. Because in Legion I only play Imperials, so I just did it all blue because blue's like the standard Star Wars hologram color.
Yeah.
But I figured since Legion has different like built-in factions and I don't collect just Imperials in that, I might do like or Shatterpoint has different factions. And they mix together, that I might do like blue and red and maybe green or something like that. I'm gonna go through some Star Wars footage and see different hologram colors and stuff.
I'm really tempted to get just the fact, I forget what the alien race is. I could have told you a few months ago when I was playing Legion more.
Black Sun.
No, the alien race that Darth Maul is. That box with the sorceresses.
Yeah, the Night Sisters and Savage Opress. Worst name in Star Wars.
I'm just gonna call him that guy. If I were to play that, I would just call him that guy because
Yeah.
I'm not going to call him
Those guys I would
Savage
do in probably
Opress.
like a green.
I mean, to give them like a little bit of credit, there was who was the other one that had like that name like that, but she came from one of those games that was part of the whole.
There's a ton of.
Well, no, remember because they did that crazy push in the late '90s around the same time.
Mara
as-
Skywalker.
No, she's not a Skywalker. She's the one who flies the fire spray. I know that's how I first heard of her was in
I know what you're talking about.
X-Wing.
I know what you're talking about.
But she has a silly name.
She's a fire spray pilot in X-Wing.
She has a silly name just like Savage Opress.
Yep, you're right. And I can't remember because I've used that pilot in X-Wing.
Yeah.
Now that you said that, I was like, oh no.
I'm not the only one who's got old man brain. It's Hunter too.
To be fair, it was one of my less used fire spray pilots. Brandon, we have any questions in chat? Sorry,
any
guys.
people that are better with Star Wars naming than us?
Yeah, anyone that remembers that fire
Or anyone
fire
that
spray
wants to yell at us
pilot's
for
name?
going so badly off topic.
Nah, that's the point of the hobby streams, to paint and go off topic.
Yeah. Sorry, man. Am I having to make? I'm making poor Brandon really work to keep up with my hand over there because I'm kind of going all over
Sorry, I
the
was
place.
baiting a bot, trying to watch Ben.
Oh, thanks. So no, I'm assuming no questions
There's
in
not
chat,
really any questions.
unless there was unless the
questions
bot
about
had
the
one.
bot, yeah.
Thank y'all for pointing that out. Sorry, guys. I would have pointed that out sooner, but my phone died looking at chat. Sorry about that.
Your phone died.
Yeah, well, I've been chatting with people from Gen Con and stuff today, so it's been a busy day.
All right. So let's. Oop, almost.
Savage Press. Gosh.
It's so funny that I can't think of the other name because it
I
drives me
I
crazy.
will find it
Put
as
him
soon
on
as I
the
get home.
turntable for a second.
God, that looks so good, Ben.
Do you like him?
I love that.
Okay,
That's I love that shading. that blue gray white stuff always gets me because but this shows you guys like yes, Ben's a really good painter, but we're talking about Ben's been what time is it, Brandon?
We've been going about 50 minutes.
Yeah, so in about 50 minutes, Ben has gotten such a good looking white on that character. And he's got the flesh tones and stuff, but like the white is a historically difficult color, and it's something that even I'm still afraid of. There's a few, I'd say, hobby boogeymen, and I'd say white and yellow are probably top of that list for a lot of people. And
Yellow is harder.
I'd say yellow's still harder, but this kind of demystifies white for me a little bit because I've always had a problem with that up until
The problem with yellow is that there are a ton of ways to go wrong and get green,
we'll have to do a
and
yellow.
there are
just
much
a
fewer
yellow
ways
stream.
to go right and keep it yellow.
What we should do at some point is maybe do some basic streams where we just instead of like focusing on a particular mini. I like what we did here with this is like you're talking about how to do white and were you happening to use this mini for it. We should do like a stream where we talk about a particular doing yellow or something like that and do a few different minis of that.
But anyway,
there's a lot of different
since
methods.
we're pretty close to wrapping up, let's go through the white painting pointers. Yes, definitely you want to start with the white base coat.
Yes.
And then just as you go, just remember to be sparing. The easiest way to screw it up and make it harder is to shade too dark, to shade too much. So just start with a nice light mid-tone and gradually work down. Don't try to start with like black shadows or super dark gray shadows. Just something, just get a little bit darker, because the darker you go, the less it looks like white, and the more area that you cover with those shadow tones, the less it looks like white. It's funny, when I was first starting this guy, I looked at a lot of Gandalf the White paint jobs.
Oh, yeah.
And what's weird, man, like, it's so yellow. That whole, like if you look at the official one, and even a lot of, like, the really high caliber Gandalf the White scopes, they look so yellow. I was really surprised.
I'll have to go back and watch the movie. Maybe that's something with
Yeah,
the lighting in there. Or something
I'm
like
sure that he had, some, because like I was saying, you always want to add a little bit of tone to it. For this guy, I chose a bluish gray. For Gandalf, in all these situations, they chose more of a yellow. But you can go further than that. You can also try, as long as it's not too saturated, it looks more like a toned white than a color. So if your shadow color is like a beautiful vivid purple, it's gonna just look like light purple. But if you desaturate it a little bit, you can start with even like a purple base and still end up with a model that looks white, as long as it's desaturated and pale.
It also helps, like, you put even with a Caucasian skin tone, you definitely there's a difference. You can tell that actually helps make that white illusion better. Is that you've got skin right next to a light skin, and then it's brighter than that, so your mind is automatically like, ah, yes.
Yeah, and that
And
honestly
that works for any skin tone, really. That's not
Something
pure
for it to
white.
pop off.
Yeah.
And that was honestly kind of a challenge with all these guys. If you, I don't know if any of you did bother to go to the Kickstarter page and get a look at some of the other
Which you should.
minis there, which you should. But all of them are almost exclusively like, you know, there's the red wizard and the green wizard and the blue wizard. So for all of those, there was kind of a challenge of sticking with the color, but also making like a cool paint job that was interesting and didn't just look like a wall of blue or a wall of red. Green was the hardest because she's actually like a plant lady, and she has green skin and green hair and is also wearing green clothes. So
You didn't want her just like a standing green crayon.
right. And so that's another way you can, even with green, all the secondary colors, so green, orange, purple, you kind of have more room to work with, because you can add a lot of yellow to green before it looks yellow, you know. It'll look yellowish green and not yellow all the way up until the end.
It's green.
So I was able to, you know, it's yellowish green here, cooler green with just more white highlights there. And then you can also, it's the same with any other color, you can add weird shading, purple,
Sure.
shading the green with purple, shading the green with blue. Even with a dark red to get it.
I was actually
To
going to
really
ask you
make it
about
pop.
red. That would be an interesting choice, too.
Red is, what I've been seeing a lot lately with red is, with some of the really great painters out there, is there's no white. Red is the lightest color, that pure red, and everything else is shading, and they'll shade down to black. And so even though, so you get this just beautiful, like satiny, like red thing. Red is another one though where I will also, as I get deeper into the shadows, I'll start to add in blues, sometimes bluish greens, again to get that optical push. It's something you can't really see, like your brain doesn't see, your eyes don't see it, but your brain does. Is that, or is it the other way around? Basically, it just, no, I guess it's, your brain doesn't see it, but your eyes do, because it does, you don't see a red shaded with a blue, you just see a more vivid red.
Sure.
And if you knew it was there and got close, then you could see the shading. But yeah, white is a little tougher to really make vivid like that. And I was kind of alluding to, there are some if you really want to go pro, really want to test the limit of your skills, instead like you can try to add a little bit of orange or a little bit of some color like that to the highlights, and have the shadows be a blue, so that again you get that contrasting color feel going on. Or maybe to the very deepest shadows, you add some orange or some red, and then you just really get, maybe you can really get a vibrant
You
thing
start going
that
real
way.
color theory on people. And
Yeah,
have some fun.
exactly. Now, this is something I haven't done personally, just because I haven't painted enough white minis for it to really be a thing. And when you have an official like commission project, you can't just like play with it.
Yeah.
You know, so when I was painting the studio wizard, it wasn't good to just like, well, let me just try and see what happens if I shade with blue and add some weird orangey highlight. No, we have to get it done. There's a deadline. This isn't about, I'm not here to experiment. I'm here to get a result.
But
But yeah, so everybody else can try that. And then maybe if I ever get around to painting something white, I'll do that. You know what I used to do way back when I was still a War Machine player, I would shade some white robes with like really desaturated purple, and then use that yellowish off-white as a highlight to try to go for that effect. And that's one way to go.
I'm gonna have to learn a little bit more, because
But yeah, this is all color theory stuff. If you guys haven't ever looked at a color wheel or read about, contrasting colors and how they work optically, then you're probably like, what are you talking about? Why would I use purple? Why would I use yellow when it's just white, dude? It's just white.
it's just white. But as you can see, it's not just white. There's a lot that goes into it. I'm about to be painting an army that's black and white specifically, and it's going to be great. It's just like the exact opposing force. It's going to be
Well, see, that's cool though, because like I know you're doing Black Templars, so
like they have like a bone white,
Yeah.
and then you
the
can,
off-white is so different.
you can edge highlight the black armor with like a grayish blue again, instead of just flat, gray.
And I've never
And
edge
again, you get
highlighted
that.
a thing in my life. It ain't happening.
How you can do a black Space Marine army with no edge highlights?
I might
how
dry
am I
brush
going to
it.
know? They're just going to look
I
like
might dry
voids
brush
with giant gleaming shoulder
Hey,
pads.
we actually
on
do
each
have
side.
some of that really the Vanta black stuff here. I could make a voids, little voids.
Yeah.
It's true. Do we have any comments to chat before we kind of wrap it up?
Curious about Ben's Instagram handle.
T00 Mini, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's T2 Mini, T00 MINI, if you want to follow Ben.
Yeah,
on Instagram.
I like terrible plays on words because they get stuck in people's heads.
And they're good for search
It's a
SEO.
really dumb play on words. Too many instead of too many.
Yeah,
Get it?
and
Yeah, it's
he's
not funny,
been
but
painting
it'll
lots of
stick in your head.
squigs recently. If you want to check out his squig army,
What is a squig? What
your
are
little
squigs?
hoppy little boys. They're hoppy little boys.
Yep, they bite.
They bite.
They bite. They
And-
live, they learn, they bite.
Also, just want to make sure people are reminded that maybe came in late. The Gen Con sale, our virtual booth, is on Warehouse 23 right now. You can check out our brand new releases for the show, which are wiz-war and Tribes. Those are available until August 10th, and then you won't be able to get them until their actual retail release. Also today, Proteus came out. It's full retail release. You can get that at the same deal.
And Tribes are in cool pocket boxes.
Yep, they're Nito pocket boxes.
That's the sound of my wet palette closing.
That's the
by
wet
way.
palette because it's on the mini. And then we've got sales for pretty much matching what we're selling at the booth. So you get 15% off some Munchkin titles, Munchkin games, accessories, expansions, some dice games, accessories, expansions, Car Wars stuff, and some other stuff. So take a look at that sales page. Those will be going from now till August 10th. So check those out. And if we don't have any other questions, I guess we can wrap that up.
Yep.
Is that
Anybody got
good,
anything?
Brandon?
We're good.
Thank y'all
Alright,
for tuning
yeah.
in.
Thanks for tuning in. I need to do the outro.
Yeah, go for it.
What's the important stuff is there anything we need to cover?
I just covered it all.
What
pretty much.
Kickstarters do we have? Don't
We
forget
have
the Caligula Kickstarter.
Caligula Kickstarter. That's going on till everything's going till August 10th. How about that?
Everything's going till August 10th. Have fun at Gen Con. Check out our Gen Con sales. Thanks for watching. I do these about once a month. Sometimes I join for the games. But yeah, I will be back in a month painting something.
We'll see. We'll
All
see.
right. And thanks for joining us. And I will see you next time.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.